Start with you, since you're just joining us. This is it, isn't it? How fast do you expect the process of appointing the next commissioners to be? Or which factors will be determining that from where you sit?
Yeah, I believe the biggest challenge will be the attitude that our people generally have, believing that there is no time. You need 3 months, you need 2 months to bring in, to do interviews and to do all that. I think that is a stereotype that should be completely washed away from the Kenyan people. We have enough time, in my view, to the elections. Even when you look at it in the time frames of the law, we actually have enough time. But people should not agree to be lazy. You see, actually, already the commissioners delayed us. And then NEMS took a time, some time before they were handed over to the president. And now we are coming to a situation whereby we are guessing when should they begin. These people should sit down immediately, do the interviews immediately, and actually appoint a new officer. For me, it's a matter of about 2 weeks should be enough for us to actually have already appointed, or rather selected, the new commissioners.
Dismas, is there neutrality in the selection panel?
Well, it's never going to be neutral, and I doubt whether it was intended to be neutral, because the two key players, that's CORD and Jubilee, have already nominated their persons, indicating that people are going to be taking sides. But for me, I think even if they are taking sides and they are pursuing their leaders' selfish interest, they should be able to engage in a recruitment process that will give us commissioners who actually respect the electoral process. And in as much as our politicians have been engaging in a lot of mischief, I think most of it has been gaining political capital. We know for a fact that the recruitment team will not start office, or rather will not start their work till they're sworn in by Justice Maraga. And Justice Maraga, his name has not just gone to the National Assembly, his name has not been, it's not been vetted, he's not been sworn in. So in as much as you love the political leadership from CORD and Jubilee, all of them claiming you're running short of time, these are the same legislators who are delaying everything. So right now they would be making a lot of noise, but we have to wait for Maraga to be formally appointed to office, then he can move with speed. But the expectation is that as we move forward, the people that are going to be recruited, they must demonstrate competence, that they actually understand what it is to run an election. And our biggest tragedy, Ben, has been all along, is that we've been just running around the personalities running the elections. We've not attempted to look at the processes. And for me, if I was going to be, say, Dr. Evans Monari seated in that panel, I'd like to establish from the people who have expressed interest that do they actually understand what the electoral process is. And the bottom line is they need to make sure that the process is predictable. Because a good election is anchored on one thing, that the process is predictable, whether it's a voter registration, whether it's procurement, everything is predictable. The only thing which needs to be unpredictable is the outcome. But Kenya seems to work in a reverse manner. There are the processes, voter registration, procurement, everything else is unpredictable. But guys from the Jubilee side, they've already told us they've won by 70+1. So those are the things that we need to address while we are recruiting new commissioners.
All right. Okay. Brian, what is your take on this?
I think I do echo some of his sentiments, in the sense that the processes should be a primary focus for us when we are actually addressing the issue of the recruitment. But one thing that we have to appreciate is the fact that we have a secretariat which is running under the able leadership of Chiloba. There has never been a vacuum in the secretariat, which actually possesses the institutional memory of the IEBC itself. But what we are looking for here is a commission that now comes in terms of totality, bringing on board all the membership that it comprises in terms of the numbers as agreed by the Joint Select Committee of Jubilee and CORD affiliations. And these 9 coming over, we expect, as you said, to bring that kind of professionalism now to trigger or to activate their capacity of the support that they need in terms of the secretariat to give us a credible and fair and credible elections come 2017. Now that there's no vacuum, as I would want to put it, as most of the people would want to say there will be a vacuum. To me, there is no vacuum, because the secretariat has been running ever since, time immemorial, when it was constituted up to now. It's still, undertaking the role that it's supposed to undertake.
All right. Bolo,
yes.
What needs to happen for Kenya to have a very good batch of next IEBC commissioners?
Let me say, from a governance perspective, that what really erodes the confidence that people have in an institution is the processes that they put in place. First of all, if someone would want to cheat Kenyans, there's no sufficient time, that is really wrong. Because certain aspects of the electoral process can run concurrently and simultaneously. The recruitment of the IEBC commissioners, of course, we're looking for men and women of impeccable character, integrity, men and women who cannot be bought, who cannot be sold in a market, men and women who knows the value of Kenya as a country. And therefore, I'm saying that we must look for capability in the people that would apply, that meets the criteria, first of all. And secondly, we're looking at people with known character in terms of impartiality, knowing that the process defines where Kenya will go tomorrow or the other. So if I look at it, I think I want to agree with my Wakili who says that we have enough time. In fact, it doesn't take long to put in this place. If this is saying that they will have to wait for our CJ nominee to be able to swear them in, I agree with you. But then the process should begin ASAP. The only problem is that sometimes we take individual interest at the expense of the nation's interest. If I were these commissioners, I would not even say, if I resigned, you've resigned. You walk away. And when we walk away, we have capable directors. So to me, moving forward, in terms of ensuring that this transition, whenever these commissioners are actually have not been consistent or they're being fired, is that these directors, we must have directors who are capable to be able to run the secretariat with or without the commissioners. So that when the commissioners exit, then they can still continue with the electoral process without saying that the commissioners must come in first before we can continue.
Okay, you say some of the processes can continue concurrently, but wouldn't that interfere with the commission's timelines? The commission has some timelines that it has set all the way from as early as this year all the way until the elections.
Let me say something before Chiefs on that one. Let me say this was a specially politically arranged sort of setup. If it were not, I think we would have taken the path of, in terms of taking a step after every step in terms of actualizing those requirements in terms of voter registration, audit and all that. But now this being a specially arranged sort of platform, I think we can only allow for flexibility.
So we interfere with the timelines that are there, but you're the same one who says that the commission is running because the secretariat is there.
Yes, look here, Ben, take it this way. We ought to have a body already of commissioners in place by that date of I think September. That has been surpassed by time. Now that we are talking about 30 days having been lost, we can only devise a way of ensuring that at least we tackle these issues in a concurrent way as he has put it, so that we could, at the end of the day, satisfy the actors who are involved in this.
I'm still not satisfied. What happens to the timelines?
Actually, the timelines are not cast in stone. They need to review the timelines to reflect the reality. Meanwhile, as they do that, to be able to see what can be actualized within the law, we can begin the process of identifying. We've already appointed the people who are the panelists. So why aren't we advertising? And remember, we are not advertising for the first time. The commissioners who came in who are actually the current commissioners, were actually recruited on a job description. We have it. The terms of reference of the selection committee is still there. Nothing is going to be created anew, so that we've got to wait. If the commissioners need to exit, I don't even see why they are there. What are they doing if we have to wait for the timeline to be actualized? We need to allow them to exit so they can have a transparent process where they have no interference. For example, you heard the chairman saying that they will move out, but those who are meant to lose will continue losing. Actually, he has no goodwill. He has no interest in the security and safety of this country. He doesn't care whether the electoral process will produce for us a credible result.
That will bring me to the next question, Dismas. Is it necessary for them to stay in office until the next ones are sworn in?
Well, from the legal perspective, and Ishmael is a top lawyer, maybe he's the one supposed to be among the panelists. He should advise us. But ordinarily, they should have gone, because right now they're still in office and they've been accused of all manner of acts of commission and omission. Some Kenyans think these guys are guilty. They shouldn't be in office for another 1 hour. So one easily wonders, when they're in office today, what exactly are they doing in office today? What are they doing in those offices? Are they still taking decisions that are going to influence the outcome of the next general election? So for me, I think these guys ought to have gone home a long time ago, and there's no vacuum. The IBC is a system which has got infrastructure. And in the unlikely event that you've got a vacuum, then one will begin to wonder, what have they been doing for all this time while they're in office? Because they've been in office for a long time. If they've been able to create a system or infrastructure which works, then there's a liability on their part. They ought to have gone home. But coming back to an important issue that Bolo has raised, we need to respect law and order in Kenya. Part of the reason why we keep on getting into a crisis one after the other, we don't respect law and order. If these new, the panelists that they are referred to of Dr. Evans Monari and company, they place an ad in the newspaper, they're looking for commissioners. In the Kapasa Zoo, they've not been given the instruments of office for them to start doing any search. So they cannot do that because they'll be strangers. And I would imagine if any of them is naive enough to say that we can start doing the recruitment process now, that process will be stopped right at the High Court. So it's not going to be a legal process.
Ishmael, why do they need to stay in office until the next one is sworn in? Will there really be a vacuum?
Of course, they do not need, and I think my brothers have already explained, they do not need to stay in office. But I will answer this in two limbs. One, Kenya is missing professionals who actually can discipline themselves and agree to stay on course for the interests of the people and the law. Yes. If you look at the names that have been proposed right now, actually, who are those people? Super guys. You look at Oginde with his ministerial background, you look at Monari, you look at Mary Kigen, you look at Baluto, former judge. Exactly. So if you look at them, you actually fail to understand why they would even listen to court. So I wanted to qualify the statement when my brother Dismas said that they will be partisan because they've been appointed by their respective suitors. That is not correct. If I am appointed today to act for a certain group, it is not because I will be necessarily defending them and giving, necessarily responding to what they want. Why we have agreed to have each team send its representatives is so that at least a team does not feel that it's either shortchanged or that their views are being ignored. But it does not mean that you go back to consult COD on how to interview professionals who are coming in to be commissioners. So I think that's where the problem is. Professionals also, our major issue is we are appointed to a high office, a high calling, and then we end up actually slipping back to where we have come from, where it's about nepotism and political sectarianism.
Yes. If I come to you, Brian, remember, if you're just joining us, you're watching Sunday edition here on KTN News. We are talking about the IEBC, the process of appointing the next commissioners of Kenya's electoral body, the IEBC. You can join this conversation. Call us live in studio. Our studio lines are scrolling at the bottom end of your screen. You can call us with your contribution, question, or statement, whatever you have to contribute to this debate. Yes, Brian.
I think I want to give a sort of contrary opinion from what Waziri has tabled, given us in the sense that...
Wakili.
Wakili. I will be, inshallah. So when he says that these guys are not going there to exercise that kind of, being skewed in terms of decision-making, I think it would be wrong. That is, Wakili is talking from an idealistic sort of point of view. That's how it should be. But in a Kenyan context like this one, we do not expect you to be sent there by the Jubilee Party or Quad Party for that matter, and just go there and sit down without protecting the interests of that party. It all boils down to what you are trying to bring on board that's going to benefit the party that sent you there. So that should be actually put into consideration. Again,
we're talking about what should be done, right?
Yeah, that's ideal.
So, but Ben, I don't want to interject at this stage, but quite honestly, if you're being appointed as a pastor of a church by the people of Homa Bay, or Kisii for that matter, then you come to church to preach what the people of Homa Bay and Kisii want, then you lose the whole point. In fact, you misguide the nation. Okay. Our people always believe that professionals belong to them. But once they have appointed you, Ben, you must be true to the law.
Yes.
To the law and
the expectations. Let me finish up.
What I'm saying here is, you see, the appointment by both parties is basically a representation, achieving the aim of representation. However, when the system of recruitment, the process must be defined and agreed upon.
Yes.
So that it doesn't matter which side of the political divide you come from. And I want to challenge the people who have been brought into this particular process as panelists, not to look at the political interest, not to look at their personal affiliations with whoever might appear before them, but to take this country's interest and the interest of the public populace as the most common unifying factor. Let me tell you something. I had the privilege of being given the mandate to recruit the Secretariat for ODM when I just immediately after 2013. Right. I was given exactly 7 members of parliament. I designed the process in such a way that we ended up with the most qualified and competent people. So to me, I believe it doesn't matter which side you have been selected or appointed from. What matters, first of all, is the interest of this country to achieve credible electoral outcome. And secondly, they need to begin the process of looking at how are the current commissioners appointed, what process do they go through, how can they re-engineer the particular process, what value can they add to the process to ensure that at the end of it, the process leads to an outcome that's acceptable. Because what is really causing each and every time we have an election, we have IEBC. It is because purely of public confidence in the institutions. How do we ensure there is public confidence? Only if we can be able to implement systems which then guarantees transparency and accountability, and also they must come out communicating each and every step. This panel, instead of advertising, they will be telling us now what process they're going to follow to be able to get these people before asking, come. Where are they coming from?
That's the ideal
they must
situation.
begin to define, review the tool they're going to use and the process they're going to undertake. Then, only then, when the process is correct, the outcome is correct.
All right. Brian, you were saying something.
Yeah, that's the ideal sort of issues I'm talking about. That ideally should be the case. But as I said again, and I'm going to repeat, this is Kenya for you, and we are expecting to toe the party lines' expectations in this kind of process. Ben, there's something that you talked about when we were debating about the issues of concurrency of activities vis-a-vis the timeline that is existing being short. And I think I do agree there will be some challenges in terms of these activities. But one of the central focus for us should be the issue that has been anchored in the law, and that's the issue of the diaspora voting. For instance, let me give you a scenario of the US itself with 53 or so member states, and with having 2 polling stations in the name of the what do you call them? In Washington and in New York, we have those embassies which have been actually touted to be the polling stations for this matter. That's something that perhaps we might not meet as a country. We might not factor that effectively as it would have been, owing to the because of time frame. So that's but the other activities in terms of voter registration, the issues of audit, I think those are some of the things that can be actualized within the time frame that we have.
Here's the thing. I have talked to, in the course of the last few years, talked to almost all of these commissioners, and one of them was telling me, I think like 4 months ago, that Kenyans don't have trust in public institutions. They want to trust machines. They want to trust systems rather than have trust
in the personalities.
In IEBC, as in just trust them, and that it's just a Kenyan thing to... Is it just a Kenyan thing to disband the electoral body after every few years? Does that commissioner have a point at all?
He's got a point to some extent, and I'm trying to put on his shoes. And the reason why majority of Kenyans look at IEBC with suspicion is they've never ever communicated what they do. It seems like the operators see if they're in a monastery of some friars closed in a room, deep prayers, and they don't want anybody to know what is happening. If they expect Wanjiru to trust whatever they're doing, they must engage in very strategic communications. Everything must be transparent. Like, for instance, today when Chiloba says we are ready to hold an election, or it's going to be complicated for us to have an election, is not given as the critical path analysis saying that we are supposed to have elections on August 8th, and this is what we must do to get there, so that we begin to appreciate where they're coming from. Instead, what they do, they invite journalists for a media conference at 10 o'clock, Intercontinental, give them a lot of tea and cookies, and say, we are not ready. But they don't tell us exactly the steps they're supposed to follow. So then how do you begin to trust them? Because they haven't told us. For us, we are not able to appreciate. And then the procurement. It seems to me that when the commissioners go to office, they do not want to create for us those predictable processes, so that we know this is voter registration, then after voter registration, this is what happens, so that a normal Onyango or Kemunto in Kisii can actually visit an IEBC office in Kisii and will understand, maybe after 1 hour, understand that this is the democratic process. This is what is supposed to happen. There's supposed to be a lot of transparency at IEBC. That's even why in other mature economies, the ballot box is actually transparent so that you see what's inside that box. But for our people here, they have not done that. And then number two, everybody who gets appointed to IEBC, initially, as Ishmael has said, when you're being recruited, you are very happy and people see a lot of confidence in you. But as soon as you get into office, instead of focusing on the electoral process, you zoom into procurement. Because majority of the commissioners today are accused of having spent most of their time attending procurement meetings instead of going through the electoral process. And some of them are already in court, they have got cases. And they're saying they're not guilty because there's no evidence. So if they want to earn public confidence, they must be very transparent. They must hold so many meetings so that all the key stakeholders, like for instance, if you are the head of, say, Amani National Congress, do you have trust in IEBC? Does IEBC tell you everything? How come in other parts of Kenya during the election day, you've got 100% voter turnout? That never happens anywhere. I mean, when you look even at the social transformations in society, there are some people are supposed to die, and not everybody will manage to go and vote. So unless they clear those cogs, then people will not believe in the process.
Ishmael? Yes.
I think Kenyans really love and trust their institutions until they are given an excuse why they should not trust them. Look at the presidency. We don't impeach our president like other countries every time in between his term. Look at the police office, the police department. Yes, we have a lot of problems, in fact, within the police, but we allow them to go on with all their work, including doing wrong things. Look at other institutions. But since the coming in of the new constitution, what has happened is Kenyans have realized actually they are quite powerful. And they have realized that the people running down the institutions are more specifically the professionals. And that's why I go back to the professional. That, Ben, you sit here because you have been hired by your boss, if I may use that term. But you do not sit there. Now, today we are talking about the politics of the week. You are not sitting there to propel the interests of your boss. So when you are appointed as a panelist to actually interview professionals to sit as commissioners, the most important thing you need to remember is that your boss's interest ends there. Now you go into the law and you look at what the Kenyans want. When you are appointed as a judge in this country, you cannot come and propel the interests of your wife or your community. And now Judge Maraga would be a Chief Justice, God willing. He is not going to propel the interests of the Kisii people, but of the Kenyans as a whole. So as my brother Brian said, whether it's ideal or not, the real culprits in this nation are actually the professionals who are running down our institutions, and it is not the institutions themselves.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. What I say is quite okay. What I do...
It's actually true.
Let me agree for the first time. Let me agree on that. Let me say that elections exist on a very highly charged political, context, and Kenya being a high voltage political context in this continent, I think we have to appreciate the fact some of the institutions, Ben, are quite different compared to others. For instance, when you talk about issues of electoral processes and management in this country, the stakes are very high. The actors who are looking at this issue are so many: the political parties, the registrar of political parties, the issue of candidates, the issue of what do you call it, the civil society, and also the commission itself. So the stakes are quite high, and that gives us the onus to actually ensure that we politicize this process a little bit to a threshold which is a little bit manageable. And therefore you realize that for the IEBC in Kenya, being an institution itself, as you said, the public seem not to have a lot of confidence in these institutions. That I do agree. But the nature of these institutions also depends. For instance, when you talk about an institution which does not, draw a lot of interest from the actors, nobody will bother whether it is existing. Like, if look at the issues of CIC, the commission which was disbanded the other day by and the leadership of Nyachai. Nobody was actually
the IEBC
looking.
is different. It will always be political.
This is a political, and that's why I'm saying it all depends on the context of that institution within the context of the country.
I just want to say that I don't want to blame the professionals per se. Professionals, if you're looking for a professional who can survive the political torrents, you need to look for men and women who can cut through political games to deliver the outcome for Kenyans that they can accept. Kenyans do not necessarily have failed to appreciate institutions. Kenyans do appreciate institutions, but these institutions have failed Kenyans. One person once said that 90% of leadership failures is communication-based, engagement. And I want to agree with my brother here who says that IEBC has failed to engage. Look at even this plan that we want to follow now. You heard the court saying they were not engaged. And so if you fail to engage a key player in the electoral process, what do you expect? Chaos. They lose confidence in you. When you fail to engage the general public in matters that pertain to their life, what do you expect? They lose confidence. And then again, I would like to say, they need to deploy within that particular institution strategic communication expert that appreciates communication.
Yes.
And that is the only way they can raise that confidence. Look at our judiciary, for instance. For a long time, judiciary had been inward looking. The moment they opened up, Kenyans began to actually have confidence in the judiciary until the ruling in 2013. And therefore, if you ask Kenyans, they look at the judiciary only from the top level only. And therefore, I would want to say that this particular institution, IEBC, the men and women who should be brought on board as commissioners,
All right.
I want to ask them to ensure that they are actually they understand the interplay between politics and what they've been hired to do.
All right. Sure. And that, now that you mentioned the ruling, that will bring me to the next line of questioning, and that is how much political goodwill is it to make sure that you don't malign the names of these institutions? If you lose in a presidential election petition, do you malign the judiciary because of that? But let's bring in Felix. Felix is one of our viewers. He's calling us from Nairobi. Felix, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes, sir. What is your take on this issue?
What I just want to say about it. Are you getting me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
You can. What I can say about is this.
Yeah, yes.
No matter how we try to bring women or men of high quality to the IBC, first of all, we have to let Kenyans know what is the free and fair election. Because if you go to the street and ask any Kenyans what is the meaning of free and fair election, they don't know. They only hear it from their leaders. The leaders say that if it was not free and fair, that will be the final. If they say it is free, so what I think, it should be taught how the process of election, the time for the starting of the election, the process, the counting. So at the end of it, each and every individual will know whether the election was free and fair. But most of the time, we always wait for our leaders to come to tell us it was free. And anyone saying that it is not free, ameshindwa. Then the other one will say it was not free because this and this.
All right. Thank you, sir, for your contribution. We also have somebody from Nairobi. Good morning.
Good morning, Ben.
Good morning. What is your name?
Edwin Kikimkogela.
Yes. What do you think about this?
I want to say,
Yeah.
I'm supporting this issue of IBC to be restructured. But
Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
Yes, I'm saying, nasema
Yes. Endelea.
inaunga mkono hii mambo ya IBC kuwe restructured so that we can send Raila Odinga and company to permanent retirement because they have been disturbing this country with all these issues here. Wanna reject the election. So it is good we restructure so that we send him for permanent retirement in the last.
Support wafanye uchaguzi wa haki ama wasend code to retirement.
You see, it's obvious they will lose the election. That's obvious. Uhuru Kenyatta is 70%. That's a fact. Every Kenyan know that. So I think that's my point.
Asante kwa maoni yako. We also have Kings Maina calling us from the county of Nakuru. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear us?
I'm hearing you.
Yes. What is your take on this issue of IEBC?
I am saying,
Yes.
we are backtracking on our constitutional reforms. Yes, I'm hearing you.
Go ahead with your comments.
The composition of the panel is comprising of people with no integrity.
Uh-huh.
The panel,
Mm-hmm.
the panel comprises.
So what una swali?
Record of Mr. Munali,
Uh-huh.
where he litigated a matter without authority.
Okay.
And he relied on documents which were not brought in court.
All right. So you're punching holes into the panelists.
The panel is wrongly constituted. There is no public participation.
All right. Thank you, Maina. That is Maina from Nakuru. The first gentleman did raise an important question as we wind up on this topic, starting with you, Dismas. How much of a role, how big of a role do politicians or political players, play in terms of making Kenyans' minds about whether the IEBC or whichever electoral body is in place has performed or not?
Unfortunately, in Kenya, we are led by a few tribal lords. And for them, the definition of free and fair counts. Whether the definition is logic upside down, it will always count. Like, for instance, if, say, Raila Odinga loses an election and he says the elections were not free and fair, it does not matter if the election was free and fair. Everybody is going to believe that it was not free and fair. And simply it goes back to what Bola has indicated, that the Electoral Commission has not gone the extra mile to engage in strategic communications so that the voter has got the ability to take a decision on his own to understand that actually this election was free and fair. And this was a big challenge in a country by the name of Venezuela. People claimed that the elections were not free and fair. And they got a new commission which came up with a very interesting software that when you go to the polling booth, it's a screen touch. So you vote for the person you want. And then it prints out a receipt. So the receipt is actually what you insert at the ballot box. And at the end of the election, they pick 53% of the receipts or the ballots cast to find out whether they are consistent with the electronic tallying. And if there is any difference, then they say the election was not free and fair. And always, wherever they do that, they establish that the Venezuelan electoral process is always free and fair. Now, if you're able to have that kind of a system, that if you're voting, say, in Nairobi, you go to Nairobi Primary School, you cast your ballot in favor of, say, Ishmael Nyaribo, and at the end of the day, in the evening, the two candidates agree that we are going to pick random 53% of the ballots cast to see whether they're consistent with the electronic voting. And if it's 100%, then at that stage, if a politician tells you that the electoral process is not free and fair, then you can tell him on what basis. Yes. But right now in Kenya, if you want to establish whether or not the electoral process was free and fair, you do not even know where to begin.
Ishmael.
Yes, Ben, the buck stops with Honorable His Excellency the President and Raila Odinga for now. I'm talking in terms of goodwill. If His Excellency and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga do not want us to have any animosity, they can actually close it over a cup of tea and coffee, and then we forget about the past. When you hear Honorable Raila Odinga saying that I want a Wambo military, a Wambo what? Soldiers, that's really, scary for some people. When you hear the head of state say, mukule nyama, tukule nyama, meze mate, and we will win 2017 flat. I mean, it means we're actually doing nothing. We're just spectating. We will go to 2017 knowing Uhuru Kenyatta will be president. So every one of us actually goes there dejected. So if these two gentlemen marshal their troops and say, we do not want to hear anything tribal, anything discriminatory, anything, trying to make people feel that they do not matter, then, of course, we will have no issue. But as long as they continue to propel those statements, we are bound by their leadership style.
Your closing remarks on this?
Oh, sure. Oh, thank you, Ben. When we talk about electoral management, Ben, from the perspective of the political parties, I can say that the political parties is not the only interested party in the electoral management in this country. We have other stakeholders such as civil society. We have other stakeholders such as even the candidates themselves. We also have the registrar of political parties as an interested party to these issues, and the commission is also at large. And therefore, these people, all these items have a role to play in ensuring that the issues of election management in these countries are addressed to the fullest, threshold. We realize that if we leave this to the political parties only, we are going to politicize the issue of elections to a notch higher, in the sense that the other actors would seemingly look like they are not actively participating in the issues of election management. So we have all the stakeholders all have an onus to play in this kind of election management process.
Bolo, do politicians politicize our election management too much?
I don't believe so. I think politicians only fill the vacuum left by IEBC in terms of their failure to be able to communicate and engage the public and engage all stakeholders who have an interest in the electoral process. I'll give you a typical example. I was in Zambia during the electoral period, and the vacuum was filled with a lot of information that there are ghost voters in their register. They hired 2 Kenyans who actually went there, and when they spoke, the public accepted and believed, and they went on an electoral process in an election without even doing anything. They were given the money to audit the register. They audited, and they found no ghost voters in the register. And the general populace accepted, and they've gone through a smooth electoral process, though contested because of the narrow margin. So I want to say that if IBC, as an EMP, an election management body in charge of election, must not leave vacuum for careless talk by any politicians. Politicians are interested parties in the electoral process. They have to win. That is the only, they don't want to lose. No one goes to election to lose. But because they have to win, they have to deploy every machinery to win. And so if you create a vacuum, first of all, you want to undertake a process where you've not engaged them. You are actually shooting yourself in the hip. Right. And therefore, I would want to say that all stakeholders, civil society, the EMB, the political parties, we must come and have a dialogue as Kenyans in terms of defining how we want the electoral process to be. Right. And therefore, I would want to say that role can only be steered by the election management body, that's IEBC, and therefore we want credible commissioners.
All right.
And for us to have credible commissioners, the process must be predetermined. In other words, we must look at the way by which we want to recruit these people. For example, I would have been very happy as a management consultant for CORD and Jubilee to give us the names of the panelists, then we subject them to an interrogation. We are going to have a panelist that have just been appointed, and yet there is no platform to interrogate them in terms of assessing their capability. And Kenyans questioning. You've heard what the gentleman from Nakuru has just spoken about Dr. Evans Monari. He has an issue already with him. So would you accept him to actually say that he has confidence in the outcome of the commissioners when he is already doubting and questioning the Evans?
Let's leave